Meet Ju In-gong. Our protagonist is running through a busy street before entering a store where his college friends greet him with excitement. We learned that his name literally means main character in Korean, which led to endless teasing growing up. But Ju In-gong didn't care. He actually wants to become the main character of his own story. After a quick glare at his friends for their teasing, he asks them about the package he saved for them, a copy of Night Saga RE. This highly anticipated remake of the classic game tells the story of humans and demons, where you choose to play as either the human hero Locke or the Demon King's eldest son, Zephyr Ragnaros, to go on adventures and complete missions. Ju In-gong knows this game inside and out, having beaten the original 10 times. Now it's been remade for a new VR machine he's just bought. He gets home, excited to dive in. He takes out the game chip, puts on his VR headset, inserts the chip, and closes his eyes, ready to begin. He tells himself he'll only play for 8 hours today, a truly modest amount for any dedicated gamer. The game world loads, and Ju In-gong wakes up in an unfamiliar room, immediately questioning if he's actually in the game. He realizes he hasn't even reached the character selection screen yet, so who is this character he woke up as? A gruff voice from behind a curtain asks if he's still sleeping. Suddenly, a massive orc opens the curtains, asking if he forgot they are busy today. Ju In-gong is completely stunned by the insane, lifelike graphics. He's so focused on the visuals that he doesn't immediately realize he is actually stuck in the game. The orc, confused, asks what graphics are, which shocks Ju In-gong because he understood him perfectly. He asks the monster for its name, which is Karak. Karak then tells him everyone is waiting for the protagonist, whom he calls Prince Shutra. Ju In-gong immediately tells us that Prince Shutra is the Demon King's 9th son in the game. He then realizes he didn't even get to select a character. He was just thrown into the game as a random demon prince. Waving his hand, he tries to open the status window, asking himself if he's actually supposed to play as Shutra for the first run. He checks his stats and is horrified. He's level 1 with all stats at 5. He realizes even an ordinary NPC in this game has at least 10 points in each stat. This character is pathetically weak for a demon prince. His class is listed as Protagonist. He checks his skills. Conquest at level 1, and Protagonist Setting Adjustment at level 1, making him question if that means what he thinks it means. Before he can figure it out, Karak shouts for him to come out, startling Ju In-gong into making haste. As he steps out of the hut, he is greeted by tons of orcs standing at attention for him. Nervously, Ju In-gong asks what the atmosphere is for. Are they in a war? Karak tells him to stop his nonsense, saying they need to eliminate the Scarlet Lightning Beast bastards, which shocks and scares Ju In-gong. Everyone shouts, "This is our first battle, let's go." The protagonist nervously tells them to hold on, asking about his tutorial. A quick view of Ju In-gong's memory, showing a giant red orc, explains why this is happening. The Scarlet Lightning Tribe's orcs have formed a military force for an uprising that Prince Shutra has to resolve with the 7th prince and 8th princess. Ju In-gong nervously asks Karak if they are only taking 10 people when it's war. Karak replies that he told him yesterday this was just patrolling, then asks the MC if he ate something wrong because he's acting strange. Ju In-gong looks down, pondering, then opens his status window to check for a minimap, saying it's much more convenient. He decides to keep it up at all times. Checking the minimap, he sees a hidden path, questioning if this is a hidden event. Karak worriedly looks at the map before Ju In-gong tells him it will take forever if they go on the same route. He tells Karak to follow him, saying he knows a faster route, which confuses Karak. The group of orcs travels a path through the thick jungle and over rocks. Ju In-gong is tired from all the walking as they finally reach a foreboding door in the side of a mountain. Karak asks Ju In-gong how he found this place, asking if he's a mage. Ju In-gong, tired and out of breath, says, "As if." Karak asks if he's all right, noticing how tired he looks. Ju In-gong thinks to himself that he didn't know a level 1 would be this unfit. As he takes a step, telling them to just check if the door will open first, a strange light envelops him. He's shocked to find out he has leveled up just from walking. He checks his stats, realizing all of them went up by 2, and he has 2 extra points to put into any stat. He's shocked by this, saying, "That's insane."
Karak shouts at him, showing they have broken down the door, telling him to hurry. Our protagonist nervously replies that he's coming, running to the group. Gong says he doesn't know what might be in there, but at least he's not alone, and more importantly, the protagonist has plot armor. They cut to a dark, eerie cave. Karak says the dwarves dug this cave, and Dong is surprised, saying he didn't know they had dwarves. Karak tells him not anymore, but they used to exist. Gong asks if they moved out of the demonic realm or something, and Karak replies he doesn't know, he only heard about it. As they walk, they come across a ton of treasure just laying there, which surprises Karak and the other orcs who shout they struck gold and must be weapons the dwarves left behind. Another orc shouts to take it all as they laugh. Gong is lost in thought, looking at the treasure, realizing that he doesn't have the level or stats for any of the weapons, to his displeasure. He says he'll still take them, checking if he has a way to store stuff in his inventory. He tests it on a weapon, touching it and saying take, and then sees it disappearing into his inventory, much to his delight.
He checks the minimap, realizing there were enemies laying in wait. As he shouts for them to wait, a red explosion takes place, throwing back all the orcs. Realizing what happened, the others get ready to fight, as a red orc's feet step out of the hole that was made from the explosion. A fleet of red orcs appears, and their leader says mockingly that they knew they would come this way, an evil smile on all their faces. The leader is the Scarlet Lightning tribe's general named Kai-chan. He commands his fleet of red orcs to kill them all, to the horror of the green orcs. What ensues is a bloody, one-sided massacre, as tons of orcs are cut down by the red orcs. Gong's sword in hand is scared and unsure what he should do. He thinks he should steal the kills of the others to get the EXP at least. He sneaks behind a red orc as it is fighting a green orc. With sword in hand, Gong takes a swing at the red orc, only to be shocked that the sword broke on impact. Scared and sweating, Gong looks questioningly at the broken sword as the red orc, now focused on him, turns around angry. The protagonist looks at the orc in horror before running away. Of course, like a white person in a scary movie, he trips over a rock, landing on the ground, where he is alerted that he only has 1 out of 15 HP left. Scared and desperate, Gong turns around looking at the giant red orc coming at him, swinging its weapon. Gong closes his eyes screaming, preparing to die. Then, Karak intercepts the red orc's weapon, shielding the protagonist, telling him to move. Gong, surprised and grateful, calls out Karak's name as we see them fighting. Gong stands there, realizing his hands are still shaking, reminding himself, it's just a game. He tries to go to the game's menu, saying that's enough for today as the game is way too real and scary. Then he notices he has no skills owned. Horrified, he checks for the option to end the game, realizing there is none there. In shock, he drops to the floor, realizing he's trapped there. The orc general, after killing another green orc, takes notice of Gong. The general summons magical flying stones straight at the protagonist. Gong sits there, shocked and frozen, then horrified, he says, I can't die here, as he gets hit by the stones. He is sent flying into the wall of the cave with a loud crashing sound. The protagonist is gasping for air, on the brink of death, huffing and puffing as his eyes slowly close. He sees the general running towards him, prepared to finish him off. His HP drops to 0. Gong wakes up in a dark, spooky place he's never seen before. He nervously looks around, asking himself where he is. The last thing he remembers is getting absolutely destroyed by those red orcs. So naturally, his first thought is the most logical one. He thinks he died. But just as he's starting to panic, a bright light begins to shine in the darkness. A voice echoes from the light, telling him that he is the fated existence of this place. Our boy is completely shocked as the voice commands him to conquer, enslave, and then rule. And then he sees where the voice is coming from. An angelic woman with beautiful blonde hair, different colored eyes, and let's just say she's got more curves than a winding road. Gong just stares, totally confused. The light fades, and just like that, he's snapped back to the battlefield. The green orcs are still getting slaughtered by the red orcs. It's a total beatdown, but some are still fighting back, managing to take down a few of the red-skinned bullies. The chief of the red orcs walks forward excitedly, laughing to himself. He thinks they must be stupid for coming with such small numbers, and he tells his warriors to kill them all and waste no time.
But before they can, a strange golden light begins to glow from a figure on the ground. Our boy looks at his hands, asking himself if what he just experienced was some kind of awakening. The Red Orc chief slowly looks behind him, surprised to see our boy getting back to his feet, completely surrounded by that golden glow. Suddenly, a system window pops up out of nowhere, telling Gong that he has acquired the skill Telekinesis at level 1. He stares at the window, asking himself when in the world he ever learned telekinesis. He's still reeling from that surprise when another window pops up. He's unlocked a subclass, Knight of Conquest level 1. Our MC is shocked, and so are we. The Orc general, seeing this new threat, starts shouting at his army to kill our boy immediately. Karak looks on in shock, then nervously calls out to the prince, but his fear turns to resolve. Karak roars for all the Green Orcs to protect the prince, saying that he must not be harmed. With a new fire in their souls, the Green Orcs rush forward to form a defensive line.
While they fight, the mech stands there completely stunned, holding his broken sword. He looks back at the system window in disbelief, saying that Knight of Conquest isn't a class that was available in the original game, so why did he get it? He stabs his broken sword into the ground, a golden aura flowing all around him. He says he can hear spells echoing in his head, like he's known them all along. With a serious gaze, he looks forward and shouts his first spell, "Under the King's Banner." Instantly, all the Green Orcs are engulfed in the same golden aura. They're shocked as a sudden buff flows through them. The spell affects all allies in the area, and the Green Orcs roar that their strength is overflowing. With this newfound power, they charge forward, absolutely certain of victory. And with that new power, they are able to easily take down the Red Orcs. The tides have completely turned. The Green Orcs are now skillfully dismantling the Red Orc army, and the chief of the Red Orcs looks on in absolute shock. He can't understand how they suddenly got so much stronger, screaming that this is absurd. He looks over and sees our boy, still kneeling with his sword in the ground, and asks himself if this kid is the source of their new power. In a fit of rage, the Red Orc chief fires the same magical rock spell at our boy, telling him to stop at once. This time, however, our mech looks on with new power and determination. Carrot quickly intercepts the spell, cutting all the stones down with his sword. The duo looks on, ready for anything. We hear our boy shout to Carrick, "Go on!" Carrick shoots forward, wrapped in that same golden aura, ready to defeat anyone who stands in his way. Unluckily for the Red Orc chief, Carrick has his sights set right on him. He rushes forward with insane speed as the chief staggers backwards, nervously shouting, "Wait a second," right before Carrick cuts his head clean off. Shocked, the other Red Orcs look at their defeated chief, then turn tail and run away. The Green Orcs are ecstatic, shouting that they're running away and not to let a single one escape. And then we cut to the mech receiving a pop-up window. The general's merits are for his king. System windows pop up one after another, telling him he's leveled up multiple times. He questioningly looks on, wondering why his level is going up, as Carrick looks on at our boy, then down at his own hand, questioning what that power was. When he looks back up, all he sees is his prince, excitedly touching the empty air.
Back at their camp, the Green Orcs are happily dancing around the fire, celebrating their victory. But the MC is in his room, filled with frustration. No matter how he searches, he can't seem to find the logout button. He nervously tells himself to calm down and looks at the system window. He reasons with himself that there are two possibilities. One, he's stuck inside this virtual reality because of a critical bug that could be fixed when the game updates. The second possibility, which he really doesn't like, is that this isn't a game. This is reality. He thinks back on all the comics and games with that same story, and thinks about how everything felt so real, even the NPCs who can talk back and forth. And most of all, there's no mosaic censorship, meaning he can see his little Ju Ingong. He comes to the horrifying realization, what if this is the real world? Does that mean he has to die here? He says he can't take that kind of risk. He tries to calm himself down, thinking that at least he's not an orc or an ogre. Now he's a prince with a gold spoon in his mouth. As he's thinking, Karak opens the curtains to the room and asks if the prince has some time. We cut to outside the camp, where Karak is asking to spar with our boy. He says that if the MC is going to be his leader, knowing his swordsmanship level will help them prepare for the future. Our MC asks if that's really necessary, but Karak just throws him a wooden sword. To the surprise of our boy, Karak takes his stance and tells the MC that he'll hold back as much as he can. With a mocking tone, the MC asks if that's the type of thing you say to a prince, as the two stare each other down. The MC rushes into attack, shouting, "Take the fight seriously!"
much to the surprise of Karak, who already has his guard up. They get serious. And then, out of nowhere, we realize the MC has no skill at all. Karak just stands there, puzzled, as the MC strikes him multiple times, doing absolutely no damage. Karak thinks to himself that this is like an egg being thrown at a rock. In disappointment, Karak makes one sudden strike, throwing our boy back as he falls to the ground holding his head. The protagonist complains he shouldn't hit that hard, as a worried Karak asks if he's okay since he barely attacked. Then the MC sees a system window pop up. Basic swordsmanship has been acquired. To the surprise and delight of our boy, he thinks about how he gained the skill. He suddenly realizes that when he got hit with telekinesis from the Red Chief Orc, he gained that skill as well. He realizes to himself that he acquires skills when he is directly attacked by them. Karak begins to turn around, walking away, saying, "Let's end the sparring match here and go eat." But before Karak can finish his sentence, the MC asks, "Who said it's over?" Karak slowly turns around to see the MC back on his feet, standing with new vigor and determination. The MC then says, "I'm just getting started."
We start off right where we left off, with Ju In-gong rushing in to attack Karak, who just easily deflects the blow. But this time, something is different. Karak thinks to himself that Ju In-gong's movements are much better now. As Ju In-gong continues to attack, Karak is totally puzzled, wondering why he was so clumsy at the start. It's like his skill suddenly got way better overnight. With one massive strike of his wooden sword, Karak sends Ju In-gong flying back a bit, but this time, our boy lands perfectly on his feet with a new confidence. Ju In-gong smirks and asks, "How's that? Not bad, right?" As they take a small breather, Ju In-gong asks Karak what level he is. Karak replies that he was level 21 the last time he checked. Our boy excitedly opens his status window, exclaiming that he should catch up soon, as we see his level is now 7. Now, in this world, everyone has levels, but they can't just pull up a screen and check their stats like our boy can. They have to use a special evaluation spell. In other words, being able to see all your stats and add extra points whenever you want is a huge advantage, basically a superpower. Right after, Ju In-gong lunges forward to strike again, and as their wooden swords clash, he thinks to himself, "I can become stronger, faster than anyone else." As they go at it, we learn a little more about the game. The demon arc of Night Saga is all about the story of Zephyr, the main villain, and how he crushes all of his siblings to become the new Demon King. There are a ton of episodes in the game, but the most important one is the grand finale. We see a picture of Zephyr standing among the bodies of his dead family. This event is known as the Great Massacre, and it happens in the year 517 of the game's calendar. We see our boy sitting on a log in the forest, and this is where he starts to sweat. He realizes that if the story plays out like the game, he's going to be one of those bodies on the floor. He checks the date. It's currently the year 512. That means he still has some time before the big event. Right then and there, he becomes determined to get strong enough to make sure that bloody future never happens.
Just then, Karak walks up, saying he's been looking everywhere for the prince. Our boy is confused, but Karak reminds him about the meeting happening today. Ju In-gong looks back worriedly, asking what meeting. Karak just tells him to hurry up because everyone's waiting. We cut back to the camp, where Ju In-gong is sitting nervously at a meeting table with 2 new guests, the 7th prince, Chris Moonlight, and the 8th princess, Caitlin Moonlight. Chris tells him to relax and stop being so polite since they're siblings, but Caitlin points out it's their first time meeting. She kindly tells our boy to just call them by their names. We learn that these two are the children of the 4th queen, the queen of the lycanthropes, and in the game, they are a real pain in the neck. But here's the juicy secret. A year before the massacre, these two are killed by Zephyr and the other children, and the reason for that is the secret of Caitlin's birth. She's a bastard daughter. Suddenly, a furious Chris asks Ju In-gong why he fought those red orcs without following the plan, reminding him that she told him to just go on patrol. Of course, she has no idea that Ju In-gong isn't the real prince. Ju In-gong nervously says he didn't know they'd come from there. Hearing this, a worried Caitlin gets up to check on him, which completely surprises our boy. She comes close, asking if he's hurt anywhere, and he's just too stunned to speak. She exclaims that our boy is the weakest of all of them and that he has to be more careful, all while touching his face. He nervously apologizes, thinking to himself, since when were the Demon King's children this close? After she sits back down, Chris tells him he's in for a real scolding if he ever does something so dangerous again. Ju In-gong just nervously agrees. He thinks to himself, what the hell? Are they actually kind? Then, Ju In-gong has a big brain moment. He remembers that the lycanthropes are famous for being aura users. He thinks back to how he got the swordsmanship skill after getting hit by Karak. He figures if he uses the same method, maybe he can learn aura just as easily. So with a sparkle in his eyes, he asks Chris for a favor. He asks her if she can hit him using her aura. Chris looks horrified and concerned, like he just asked her to eat a spider. Caitlin is just stunned and speechless.
We cut away to a rocky mountain, where the main battle is happening. Green orcs are completely dominating the red orcs. It's a one-sided massacre. Then we see a giant red orc slashing through his own fellow red orcs as they look on, stunned. Some of them think they're finally safe, right before getting sliced in half by their giant ally. One brave red orc manages to scratch the big one, who slowly turns and gives him a gaze that could probably stare a hole through a mountain. The poor little orc recoils in fear right before the big one slams him into the ground, taking out other red orcs in the process. The big guy then shouts to kill them all, saying he'll reward whoever gets the most kills as the battle continues. Then, we see our boy waking up again in that same dark space, confused. He sees the beautiful angel lady slowly approaching him and asks if she's the one from last time. But then he turns around, shocked to see 3 other people there. One man stands in the back, another has fire for hair, and the last one looks really scary, with a skullish head and pitch-black eyes. Ju In-gong realizes he has never seen these characters in Night Saga. The woman slowly approaches him from behind, and as he looks back, the light begins to fade. He's woken up in bed, staring at the ceiling, completely confused about what just happened. He sits up, holding his head, questioning if it was all a dream. Suddenly, Karak's scary face pops into view, asking, "Ya up?" which makes our poor boy scream his head off. After complaining that Karak scared him, Karak walks away, telling him he's fine. He then asks why Ju In-gong asked the princess to hit him, saying he kept whining and begging, and look where it got him, stuck in bed. But before Karak can finish his sentence, he slowly looks back, realizing our boy has learned aura. We see Ju In-gong looking at his hands in excitement, claiming he can feel the aura flowing. A shocked Karak comes over, asking if you can really awaken your aura just by getting hit with it. Ju just says, somewhat, while still looking at his hands in amazement. Karak then asks if that's also why they were suddenly full of energy when fighting the Lightning Tribe, and our boy proudly says, yeah, that was me. Curious, Ju In-gong asks if anything happened while he was asleep. Karak replies that of course something happened. The main force won against the Lightning Tribe too. Our Mick questioningly asks, main force? He says he thought Chris, Caitlin, and him were the only ones tasked with taking them down. Karak explains there's no way they could have known how big that tribe was. Questioningly, our Mick asks who was in charge of the main force. Karak replies, General Bandal. Ju In-gong asks in surprise, what? Bandal? We learn that General Bandal was the giant red ogre we saw fighting earlier. Ju In-gong says he is one of the strongest guys out there and that he really liked him as a subordinate when he was playing as Zephyr. Then, a shocking realization hits him. This might be his chance. In the game, Bandal becomes Zephyr's subordinate in the year 515. That means he isn't Zephyr's subordinate yet. Our Mick starts to lick his lips, thinking he can just take Bandal for himself. He knows everything about him, what rewards he likes, what foods he likes, and most importantly, the secret to making Bandal your ally is to defeat him in a duel.
Back at Caitlin's camp, we hear Chris shout, "What?" in complete surprise. Both he and Caitlin are totally shocked that Ju In-gong reached the first level of aura expulsion in a single day. Ju In-gong just smirks, explaining that he put all of his new stat points into aura. He says it wasn't a rash decision. Aura improves one's physical capabilities, which is much more useful to him right now than telekinesis. Chris insists it's impossible, but then a thought crosses his mind. He asks Ju In-gong if this power is because he's a Gandharva. Chris's tone then turns a little more serious. He asks if Ju In-gong can make an underground map. Ju In-gong is confused, asking,
underground map? He thinks to himself that while he can't exactly make one, he does have a mini-map, which is basically a cheat sheet. So he confidently says that's simple, and just asks for a pen and paper. The day goes by, and we see that Gong has finished making the map. Chris is completely surprised by the detail and accuracy, slapping Gong's shoulder and calling him a genius. Gong just laughs nervously. Caitlin then exclaims excitedly that since they wiped out the Scarlet Lightning tribe's patrol, the main tribe doesn't know about these underground tunnels. Chris agrees, saying they should be able to ambush them. He then says there's something else he needs to ask, as Gong looks at him questioningly. We cut to them walking through a mountain area with several green orcs following along. Karak questioningly asks if their mission is to patrol the area again. Gong says he has no choice, since he's the youngest sibling. Karak, ever hopeful, says that at least they have reinforcements this time. As they walk, they see two hooded figures in their path. It's revealed to be Caitlin and another girl. Gong asks what's with the robes, and Caitlin tells him to be quiet, explaining that she's following him in secret, just in case. She says she'll step in if things get dangerous. Gong just smiles nervously, thinking she's a little bit stupid for being so openly supportive. The other girl greets Gong. Her name is Sarah, and she's an adjutant. After they exchange greetings, the girls say they'll just keep up from a distance, and Gong agrees. Back in the dark, eerie cave, we see the team walking through the halls. They find all the caverns are empty, and the treasures they saw before are gone. The dwarves must have taken it all. Gong asks Karak what about the weapons they took last time, and Karak figures maybe those weren't considered valuable enough by the dwarves. The team continues to walk deeper into the dark cave. Karak suddenly warns Gong that something is coming their way. Gong says he hears it too, and after checking his mini-map, he confirms it must be them. He opens his inventory, saying he took a flash spell, just in case something like this happened. He tells everyone to close their eyes when he gives the signal. As they stare down the dark cave, they see a bunch of glowing eyes staring back.
Suddenly, a horde of stone spiders comes running at the group. We learn that stone spiders often appear in caves, always in groups of dozens, and they possess a strong paralysis poison. Gong shouts for everyone to close their eyes as he throws the flash potion into the air. It breaks on impact, creating a blinding light that stuns the stone spiders, who shriek in pain. Gong then shouts at everyone to attack and kill all the spiders. Stone spiders are rendered useless if they're exposed to bright light because they live their entire lives in darkness. The orcs rush forward, weapons in hand, to kill the spiders. Even with the advantage, the spiders fight back with desperation, but the green orcs begin chopping off their legs one by one. Gong hangs back, checking his mini-map. He exclaims that stone spiders always hunt in groups, so there's bound to be a leader. He sees a big red dot on the map and shouts for Karak to follow him. The duo makes their way through the chaos of the fight, rushing forward to where the boss is. They come face to face with a massive stone spider with many eyes and razor-sharp teeth, ready to devour them both. Karak jumps forward, weapon in hand, to attack the giant beast. He makes several slashes, but is shocked to see he didn't even leave a dent, saying its exterior is too hard. Worryingly, Gong says he forgot about that. He exclaims that the creature's weakness is fire, but he can't use fire magic yet. The boss locks onto the group and rushes at them to attack. Gong nervously shouts at Karak to use fire, but Karak confusingly yells back, "Where am I supposed to get fire from?" Just then, a voice from the back tells our boy to raise his sword. As he does, his sword is suddenly engulfed in flames. He excitedly exclaims, "Magic?" He looks behind him and sees it was his sister, Princess Caitlin, who cast the spell. She asks if that's enough for him. The boss attacks Gong, but he looks at the oncoming attack confidently, with new determination in his eyes. We see an explosion of debris where the boss's leg smashes down, but our boy is already gone. We see him dashing up the boss's leg, his fire sword in hand, as he casts the skill Burning Blade, delivering several fiery cuts into the monster.
We see a wall of fire as Gong looks up at the burning body of the stone spider boss. He is then enveloped by a golden aura as a system window informs him he's leveled up 2 times. He excitedly checks his new status. Just then Caitlin asks if he's okay and what that strange light was. Juingong nervously replies, "Oh, that," and explains that it's something like a blessing and that she shouldn't worry about it. She asks if it's a blessing from Gandharva, and our boy just lies and says, "Yeah." Caitlin continues questioning him, asking if he had fought these creatures before because his responses were very skillful. Juingong nervously says he reads about them in books, looking away. He reminisces to himself that he's fought them plenty of times in the game, but he obviously can't say that out loud. Carrick interrupts the two of them, telling them to look over in a certain direction. He's pointing to a massive door, and after they slowly manage to open it, the four of them enter with Juingong taking the lead. He's shocked to see that it's a town portal. Carrick, surprised, asks if he knows what this is. Juingong nervously says, not exactly, but he has a guess. He thinks that he's not sure, but the marks on the ground look like they're in the dwarven style. He remembers that when he played as Zephyr, he never once saw a dwarf, but when he played as a hero, he saw these symbols a few times. He goes close to the crystal ball in the middle of the room, thinking to himself that if you inflict mana into it, it activates. He then tells the others that it might be a portal. Caitlin questioningly asks, "Portal?" And Sarah exclaims that judging from the design, it does seem like Juingong is right. Caitlin then asks if they can find out where it goes, and Sarah says there should be some inscriptions nearby. Carrick is the one who finds the inscriptions, telling Juingong to come have a look. The group approaches, and they realize it's obviously not demon script. It looks like dwarven characters. Carrick asks Caitlin if she can read it, but she's confused, asking why she would know how to read dwarven script. Then Caitlin asks Sarah, but she can't read it either. Then, to the complete surprise of the group, they hear Juingong reading the dwarven script perfectly. He says, it's the Gishka Mountains, portal number 2, and it's connected to portal number 3. Questioningly and shocked, Juingong asks himself, wait, how can I read Dwarven? Then he sees a system window that says he has acquired Dwarven Language Level 1. Our boy unsurprised thinks that he can learn languages like this too. A shocked Carrick asks if Juingong can actually read that, and he nervously says he thinks so. Caitlin in shock asks, when did you learn to read Dwarven? And Sarah asks, what does it say below? Juingong says, he thinks it says if you infuse mana, it activates. He turns and asks Caitlin if she could inject a little mana into it. She defiantly asks why her, and why doesn't Juingong do it himself? He makes a nervous expression, saying he's still clumsy, while thinking to himself that he can't use mana at all.
Caitlin says fine, and as she touches the crystal and puts mana into it, it glows brighter and brighter. Suddenly, it opens up a giant map, shocking the whole group. They realize it's a map of the Gishka Mountains. They're shown 2 glowing dots, their group's current location and the location where the teleporter goes. They realize there are dwarven tunnels at the next destination, too. Karak asks Juingong if that's a good thing. After all, the main forces of the Scarlet Lightning tribe are stationed right in front of the mountains. Juingong says that's exactly why this is perfect. They're going to strike them from behind. Caitlin says they should stop here for today, and that she'll go back and discuss this carefully with her brother Chris. We cut back to the camp, where we hear Chris shouting, telling Juingong he's a blessing for finding a portal in such a place. He slaps his shoulder, and our boy, with tears in his eyes from the hurtful slap, tries to brush it off. Chris lets Juingong know that if there's anything he wants, he should just say it. Juingong nervously declines, but Chris insists, saying he is the leader and he wants to reward him. He then says if Juingong refuses, his feelings will be hurt. Juingong looks down, nervously contemplating, then asks if it's okay if his request is a bit unreasonable. Chris gets curious. Our boy then asks Chris if he can teach him the Beast God Fist art. Chris looks down at Juingong with a serious gaze. Juingong thinks that he can't wield weapons properly yet because of his low level, but techniques are different. We learn that the Beast God Fist art is a martial art passed down through the lycanthrope royal family, and it's a powerful S-rank martial art. Juingong knows it's a pretty ridiculous request, so he understands if he's refused. He crosses his arms, shaking his head and saying out loud that it might be difficult, and that it's okay. He figured from the start it wouldn't be possible, slyly trying to push Chris into it. Chris stands there expressionless. Then all of a sudden, Chris says he will teach him, much to his delight and surprise. Chris says he will teach him, but he can't teach him the secret techniques. Juingong gets excited as Chris says he can at least teach him the aura part of it.
and asks if that's a good enough gift. Juingong is shocked, open-mouthed and speechless. Chris says he's not saying anything, which must mean he doesn't like it. Juingong nervously says, not at all, it's perfect. Then Chris says from now on he can think of Juingong as his brother, right? Both he and Caitlin are smiling. Juingong is shocked and thinks to himself that brother is a pretty meaningful word. He looks at Chris, who has a determined gaze, and a warm smile spreads across his face. He thinks to himself that it's fine. He actually likes the idea. They shake hands as he says, yeah. A system window pops up out of nowhere, saying he has established an alliance with Chris Moonlight and Caitlin Moonlight, and that the alliance status is normal for now. We then cut to the mountains, at the Scarlet Lightning Tribe's encampment. We see them training and guarding a tent. 2 red orcs are smiling deviously as they ask someone why they would come here. They say, our princess, as we see a girl tied up in magical chains and bruised. They ask, what brings you here, as we learn she is the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade.
We start off seeing Juingong's stats. He now has 21 points in every stat except for Charisma, and he has level 9. Juingong notes that at first, every stat would go up by 2 with each level, but now Charisma only goes up by 1. He questioningly asks himself why that is. He thinks back to the original Night Saga game, where Charisma and Appearance were separate stats. Appearance simply meant how good-looking your character was, while Charisma was about how likable they were. He supposes it makes sense, since his growth pace has been incredibly fast so far. More importantly, he's about to hit level 10. We're told that in Night Saga, whenever the 2 main characters, Zephyr and Locke, reach level 10, their unique skills go up by 1 level. Juingong figures if he hits level 10, surely at least one of his own unique skills will level up too. Just as he's thinking about this, Karak opens the curtain shouting for Juingong that everything's ready and it's time to go. Juingong affirms, and as he peeks out of the tent, Karak exclaims that he seems cheerful today and asks if something good happened. Juingong just smiles and says, not really. As they walk outside, we see the entire Green Orc army standing with weapons in hand, ready for their mission. Juingong says, all right, let's get going. We then cut to the mountains, where we hear fighting coming from inside a dark cave. We see the Green Orcs are currently in battle with some wolfmen-looking monsters, clearly a training exercise. Inside a room behind them, the team walks in, with Chris taking the lead, where they see 2 wolfmen in hoods doing some investigation on the magic portal. Chris asks them if they are finished with their investigation. One of the wolfmen says yes, explaining that this portal is connected to the Eska River of the Gishka Mountains. Chris asks if it's functioning properly, and the wolfman confirms that there are no issues, saying dwarven craftsmanship is sturdy as always. With a serious smile, Chris says, good, let's move. We then see the 2 wolfmen putting their magic into the portal to activate it. It shines brightly and soon opens up, revealing a rocky area on the other side, much to the shock of everyone, including Juingong. He says he can't believe he's seeing a gate in real life, his mouth wide open in shock. Caitlin calls to him, asking what he's waiting for as they start to enter the portal. He nervously says, he's coming, and slowly enters. We see the group finally pass through the portal, with Chris taking the lead, while Karak and Juingong stay in the back. As they walk to the edge of a cliff, Juingong realizes something. Below them is a huge encampment belonging to the Scarlet Lightning Tribe. Chris says that just as he expected, there's their base. Judging by its size, there could be thousands of troops. He explains that if General Bandal launches an attack from the front to distract them, their small unit could infiltrate from the rear and burn down their food stores. But Saria says that something seems a little strange, as there are not nearly enough troops in the camp. Chris agrees, thinking they could have already started an attack. A little shocked, Juingong points to their side, saying he sees something in the distance and that it sounds like a battle. Chris tells Juingong to focus aura into his eyes. Surprised, Juingong tries it, and as white aura gathers in his eyes, he excitedly says he can see it. He sees several red orcs fighting.
Caitlin says one side looks like the Lightning Tribe, but wonders who the others are. Chris says they're not General Bandal's men, and that today wasn't the scheduled day for any battle. Juingong, with a thoughtful expression, gazes at the war. We see white-haired, elf-like people fighting with the red orcs. He then looks closer, seeing a white-haired, elf-like girl on top of a monster slaying one of the red orcs. He excitedly says, "Dark elves," to the surprise of the group and his own shock. Caitlin asks, what did he say? Dark elves? With a serious gaze, Juingong says yes, that they have smaller builds and the fact that they're riding Dracos is... But Caitlin questioningly asks, Dracos?
Just then, Chris says they're retreating at full speed, thinking their commander must have fallen. As the group looks on, Ju In-gong asks with a nervous look on his face, "Why are dark elves here?" We cut back to camp, where the team calls General Bandel through a magical communication device. Bandel says he heard they found the dwarven portal and commends Chris's army, but asks how they knew the portal would be there. Chris says it wasn't the one who found it. It was the 9th prince, Shutra, which is Ju In-gong. Ju In-gong nervously says it was simply luck. As he looks at General Bandel on the call, he says to himself that it's strangely pleasant seeing him again. General Bandel lets him know he'll be rewarded properly at the Demon King's castle. But Chris says there was a small battle happening in front of the Lightning Tribe's camp and asks Bandel if he knows anything about it. Bandel says it was likely the Dark Elves joining the battle on their own accord. Chris asks why they would clash with the Lightning Tribe and if they weren't reinforcements from the Demon King's castle. Bandel says it's hard to say, explaining that they were planning to scout before joining up, but things went wrong. He then says they have bigger issues. The group asks what it is, and Bandel explains that the leader of the Dark Elves' independent unit was captured by the Scarlet Lightning Tribe. Chris, puzzled, asks if that reckless war was just for that? But Ju In-gong interrupts and asks who exactly the commander of that independent unit is. Bandel says it's someone Ju In-gong should know well. With a questioning look on his face, he then says it's the 6th princess, Felicia. We see her covered in purple aura as he says it's their sister. The entire group is left with shocked expressions, completely speechless.